Do you know who gets the blame for all of this? It's single mothers. And I know I've made it quite trendy to talk about single mothers because I never shut up about mine. But it's true. And it's the single mothers in Franklin that I go out to and speak to all the time who tell me about their boys failing in education.
And I call upon Councillor Morrall to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Rice, for the report, and thank you for the officers for showing up today. Colleagues, given what's happening in Ukraine today, I've told myself that I'm going to try my best not to get political, because I think it's kind of put a lot of things into perspective about our democracy, in particular scrutiny. I was in the toilet once with a Labour colleague, and I said, I always get nervous. Careful. I said, I always get nervous before I get up on this platform. And he said, Simon, we all get nervous when you get up on that platform. To which I responded, you guys get nervous.
Please.
My goodness, Please. How on earth do you think the Conservative group feel? Lord Mayor, I represent Franklin Great Park, and it was often referred to as forgotten Frankly. And the reason I became a councillor was to actually challenge my own internal bias. And I'm proud to say I'm the longest serving member of the Economy and Skills Overview Scrutiny Committee on Britain's second city and the largest local authority in Europe. And in that time, I have consistently called for a marketing strategy so we can reach our young and disenfranchised people. It's no good just relying on the same old methods. We need to start thinking outside the box. I've discussed repeatedly how university has failed a generation, and we need to rethink the approach of sending 50% of students off to university. I've scrutinised the Cabinet Member for Education over employment figures again and again, and I've happily scrutinised the quarterly update on Brexit, famously getting a £20 note out in 2018. I've scrutinised the Clean Air Zone and its impact on business, and in particular the effect it's going to have on the poorest in society, of which I represent. We've scrutinised the Commonwealth Games across the wider city to ensure that jobs from that don't just go to Perry Bar but across the city. We talked about digital inclusion, and I want to give a shout out to New Starts in Franklin that have done an awful lot of work around digital inclusion and the COVID-19 recovery plan. Another thing we've talked about is the nighttime economy, not just on scrutiny but on both licensing and planning and the effects that large developments are having with them. And we've also conducted a formal inquiry into the council's use of its large assets portfolio, which I'm happy to second to that report, which is coming up on the next item. However, when it comes to challenging one bias, there is one thing that unfortunately I have consistently talked about, and I do feel this council has ignored, and it just happens to be the very thing that I stood on a platform. It was in my election address in 2018, and that was how working class boys are failing drastically in education. And it's why I want to talk about perspective and about challenging your own bias, because I certainly don't believe that everybody in this room are just ignoring that for the sake of it. I do think it's ideological. And sometimes when you get ignored and when you have that apathy, sometimes you have to be radical. I mean, the Shufflerettes threw themselves in front of a horse. They did cigarettes on a march, and they also burnt down Northfield Library. Now, I'm not suggesting that I should burn down any public buildings, Lord Mayor, but all I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of issues in society at the moment that I believe can be directly linked to the fact that boys are failing in education. And do you know who gets the blame for all of this? It's single mothers. And I know I've made it quite trendy to talk about single mothers because I never shut up about mine. But it's true. And it's the single mothers in Franklin that I go out to and speak to all the time who tell me about their boys failing in education. My mother, I dropped out of school, and I've got 26 seconds. This institution threatened to send my mum to prison because I didn't want to go to school. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I'm your greatest asset to help solve this problem. And if I'm back here in May, please leave your ideology at the door and work with me. Let's solve this problem. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Simon Morrall, one of the best speeches you've made, in fact, the best speech you've ever made on the City Council, and it shows. We nearly gave you a clap on this side, you know, which would be unprecedented. But thank you for your contribution.